There's a lot ahead today, including more conversation about whether or not we're in an AI bubble. NVIDIA reports its results next hour, and I'll bring you that. It's either going to be more champagne or a whole lot of downtrodden people. But before we go there, I want to conclude a conversation I began a couple of weeks ago with Amit Segal. Amit, of course, is one of Israel's leading journalists. He is the author of this book, A Call at 4 a.m., which I inhaled about 3 weeks ago. And Amit was here for part one, and then we both ran out of time, and we said, let's get together and finish the interview. And since then, a lot has happened. Amit, welcome back. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for
Before
hosting
we
me.
go back into the details that I wanted to cover about the call at 4 a.m., there's a headline. There are two headlines out of Israel today. One, looks like war is resuming in Lebanon, or at least a lot of bombardment of Lebanon. And two, the Commission of Inquiry. Would you tell us what you think is going on in Lebanon, and then tell me what you think is going to happen with the Commission of Inquiry?
So, Israel marks a year to the ceasefire in Lebanon, which was the most successful ceasefire in Israel's history because Israel kept attacking Hezbollah without a single response. However, the plan to actually reduce Hezbollah to ruins relied heavily not only on the IDF but on the Lebanon army. And this Lebanon army failed to actually stand up to its commitments. It's actually heavily populated, it's full with Hezbollah supporters, and that's why the U.S. lost patience, and as a result, the U.S. pressures Israel to attack Hezbollah, thus signaling to the Lebanese people that it cannot get away with it. So what I see in the next few days is 2 or 3 massive days of attacks, hopefully in a way that would convince Lebanon to resume dismantling Hezbollah. As for the national
that would be
committee, we hope.
That would be
as
a
for
good
the national, hopefully, yes. As for the committee, Netanyahu doesn't want the Supreme Court president, which he sees as a leftist, anti-Netanyahu judge, to actually select the members of the committee. So he wants either to legislate a new bill that will enable the parliament to actually have a committee, exactly like Congress did following 9/11, or to have another option, which is a governmental committee with members selected by Netanyahu himself. I have to admit that all of the 3 options are quite bad in my opinion, because it would lead not to a thorough investigation that would help Israel to avoid such disasters in the future, but it would actually politicize the process, which has already been contaminated. So to be honest, I don't see any good solution at sight.
Well, I mean, I only have one opinion. I'm not an Israeli. I'm not a Jew, but I did follow closely the 9/11 Commission. Of course, everyone in America knows about the Warren Commission. My old White House boss, Fred Fielding, was a member of the 9/11 Commission. It actually did good work. The trouble with having a commission of inquiry set up by the Israeli Supreme Court, to me, I teach con law in America, I don't teach Israeli constitutional law, is they're part of the story. Israel was divided because of the Supreme Court's action. So whether or not you think those actions were right, the Supreme Court's part of the story in the division of Israel prior to 10/7. I don't know how they could possibly be objective about what happened on 10/7 and who's to blame for not being prepared. Is that a widely shared understanding? Because that seems to me to be an obvious conflict of interest that everyone from the left to the right would recognize. We can't have the Supreme Court set this up.
It's widely shared by the Israeli right wing, and that's why the Supreme Court suffers heavy losses in terms of its standing within the Israeli public. It has been politicized, in my opinion. You said that you cannot teach constitutional law in Israel because you're American. However, even Israeli professors cannot teach constitutional law in Israel because there is no such thing. They actually they invented a procedure that allowed them to actually outlaw a basic law, which is part of the Israeli constitution, based on who knows principles, super constitution principles, something like this, which does not exist. No one knows where to find it. So I fully agree with you. However, I don't think that the solution for the politicization of the Supreme Court is to have a government committee which is selected by politicians on the other side. So we need to find a new trick to actually pave the way to an independent investigation.
You know, I'm looking for, I have no opinion on that because it's not my country and I don't know enough. I only know what I've read in books. But whatever you come up with, I'm going to study very intently for comparative politics reason. And that brings me back to a call at 4 a.m. This is really a book about comparative politics. And I've recommended it to so many people who want to understand Israeli politics are not like the United Kingdom. They're not like the United States. They're not like anything else anywhere. And I have 6 more questions to ask you to complete my interview, and we'll hopefully get them all in. First one, you wrote, no one-man list can outlive the one man. Now, I want to ask you to explain that to the audience, what a one-man list is, and part B of that first question, Avigdor Lieberman, is he a one-man list? Because to me, he started this whole political nightmare when he didn't join the Netanyahu coalition 5 years ago. But let's start with no one-man list can outlive the one man. Explain what that means.
Okay, so in the States, you can elect Donald Trump for president, or I don't know, Ted Cruz for Senate if you live in Texas, and many other examples. In Israel, you never elect persons. You never elect a man or a woman. You elect a list. So you, even if you think you vote for Netanyahu, you do not vote for Netanyahu, you vote for Likud, for the entire party. Netanyahu is number 1 on the list, but it doesn't mean that he is elected by you. That's why we don't have constituencies. However, because Israelis live in the era of personal politics, so they fell in love with the idea of electing Netanyahu, Lieberman, Lapid, etc. So they cheat themselves, thus electing parties by thinking that they vote for the politicians. For instance, Avigdor Lieberman that you mentioned, he is the leader of Israel Beitenu. He sets the rules, he elects or selects or nominates the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. But if Lieberman resigns tomorrow, so there is no such thing as Israel Beitenu because he's no longer there. If Yair Lapid, if something happens to Yair Lapid, God forbid, so there is no such thing as Yesh Atid. So what it does for our system is a disaster, because the entire parliament, which was supposed to have 120 members, became like a theater of 5, 6 very important politicians, and the rest are fingers for hire.
So let me ask you about Lieberman. He's been always an interesting character to me. What happens to his voters when he gets hit by a bus or retires? Where do they go? Do they go back to Likud?
Okay, so here's the thing about Israeli immigrants from the former Soviet Union. When it comes to security and diplomacy, they are more hawkish than Ben Gvir. That's why Avigdor Lieberman used to be part of the right wing and a staunch right-winger. However, since the debate in Israel shifted to identity, whether Israel is more Jewish than democratic or more democratic than Jewish, so in that respect, Lieberman's voters are more secular than the far left. So that's why Lieberman found himself as the strongest opposition to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And to be honest, I don't think that something is about to change, even if Lieberman resigns.
Oh, let's pause right there. I talked to Amit right before the program began today. And when we come back, I'm going to be talking with House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. I'll play the balance of my interview with Amit Segal in hour 2 of today. Reminder, there will be an earnings call for NVIDIA today. and I've been warning you about an AI bubble. I've been relaying to you my concern of an AI bubble. One of two things are going to happen. Either the market's going to be euphoric over great NVIDIA earnings that blow past all the estimates, or that bubble's going to start to really break. And I hope it's the former, but I'll report either way after 4 p.m. today whenever we get word. Congressman Tom Emmer is the Republican whip, the third-ranking member of the House of Republicans Majority Party and the House of Representatives Majority Party. And I've been talking to Congressman Emmer's district for 25 years, Minnesota 6. It's I get both ends. I get St. Cloud and the Twin Cities in your district, Congressman. I'm always glad to have you on. We'll talk to them. You're beloved in Minnesota 6. Congratulations first on holding the line on the shutdown. Did you get any static in the district about that?
No. In fact, I think most of the people that I was hearing from, Hugh, have seen Republicans fold their tent and go home before the game is over way too often. So they were, what I'm getting now is, man, thank you. You guys finally did something. You finally held the line, and they got nothing. And that's true. They got nothing. But the problem is, Hugh, nobody wins in these shutdowns. The Democrats should have read the book on federal government shutdowns because Republicans wrote it. You cannot leverage your policy agenda from the minority by shutting down the federal government. At the end of the day, all they did was hurt a lot of Americans.
Well, I thank you for holding the line. I know that there was a lot of legacy media criticizing the Republicans, but you did what you should have done, and I appreciate it. Next question. There's another deadline now, January 30th. The appropriations process could avoid that. Do you think we'll get through the appropriations process so we don't have to do this dance again?
Well, Hugh, I've known you now for many years, and you know where I come from. I've got a coaching background. If I were to tell you I don't know that, then I wouldn't be doing my job. Yes, we are going to get this done. We've got a January 30th deadline. The Democrats blew 43 days with their needless, ridiculous shutdown. But you saw right away when we passed that bill to reopen the government, we also passed 3 of the 12 appropriations bills at the same time. I'm told you've got another 3 to 6 that are almost buttoned up and ready to go. The appropriations chair, Tom Cole from Oklahoma, is somebody that I count on. When he tells me something, I believe it. And he tells me that he thinks he can get 10 of the 12 done in short order. And then it'll come down to the end, which is usually, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but it's usually the labor bill, labor and transportation, and labor H, and labor and health, and the National Defense, or the Defense Appropriations Act. Sorry about that. Mouthful.
Yeah, that's the biggest bill, and it's got the most direction as well and the most money, so I'm not surprised that's going to be last. So, Congressman, I want to ask you about 2 political things. First, my buddy Nick Anderson will shoot me if I don't say, hey, how's the AM radio and Every Car Act doing?
I'd say it should have been law already. Nick, wherever you are, it should have been law already. I think the prospects are very strong. Like I said, it should have been done already. As Nick knows, there is huge support here in not only the House, but in the Senate to get that done.
All right. More importantly, far more importantly, yesterday, 2 judges in Texas threw out the map that was going to be offset by the California redistricting. Is the House GOP going to appeal that? Do we expect to win that on appeal?
No, so the Texas Attorney General is going to be appealing that. The House was not involved in it, even though the redistricting map involved U.S. House districts, Hugh. And so your listeners know, in case they haven't read about it, it was a 3-judge panel. It was an Obama-appointed judge, it was a Trump-appointed judge, and it was George W. Bush appointee. The George W. Bush appointee ruled that the maps were fine, and the other 2, the Trump judge sided with the Obama judge and ruled that they're not. So now they're waiting for the written opinion, especially from the George W. Bush appointed jurist, because I'm told that he's one of the most well-respected jurists in Texas. So look for that to, once that comes out. I understand the Attorney General in Texas has already said he's going to be appealing the decision. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, Congressman, we can't take politics out of redistricting. It's impossible. We can do one person, one vote, and Baker v. Carr and Reynolds v. Sims did that, and that's fine. And we can't use race, and we know that, although the court might throw out what remains of the Voting Rights Act this term. But it's just it's a silly game to try and get politics out of redistricting. What's your opinion on this? Are we going to end up with red states redistricted red and blue states redistricted blue? Because I think that's where we're heading.
Well, I mean, so first off, the line that you use, Hugh, about you're not going to get politics out of redistricting, that's like some of the guys that I work with here in Congress who say, well, I'm not interested in the politics. I'm just interested in the politics. Guess what? Politics is involved in everything that we do every day, every decision we make, every relationship we have. Politics is a fact of life. And when it comes to redistricting, you're right. Look, the Democrats have been much better at this than Republicans over the past 10 to 15 years, with Obama and Eric Holder running their program that, we were losing cases in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, you remember. Republicans are a little late to the game, but Republicans are actually trying to make sure that these maps reflect the actual population. I mean, if you look in the middle of Illinois, Bobby Rush's old district literally was like a mile in width at one place. It went like a straight line across the middle, the top of the state. So they've been doing this for a long time. Both sides, I would argue, and we shouldn't say it's Republican, Democrat. It really is what's the majority in your state. They are going to draw a map that they believe best reflects what that population is and how they protect their majority, and that's just a fact of life.
So an exit question, Whip Emmer. How do you feel about holding on to the House, assuming that there is no AI bubble that bursts?
Well, it's not just the AI bubble. There's a lot of stuff that is not necessarily within our control, but I do believe, look, I'm still bullish. Why? Because the mechanics are with us. Unlike 2018, when we lost like 40 members, we were defending over 20 of our members who were in seats that Hillary Clinton had won in the 2016 election. Yeah. This time, we only have 3 of our members in seats that Kamala Harris won. And by comparison, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have 11 of their members. This is without redistricting. They have 11 of their members in seats that Donald Trump won in the last election. And Hugh, again, on the mechanics of it, Donald Trump moved the needle with traditional Democrat voters more than anyone we have ever seen in our lifetime. More young voters voted for him. More working men and women voted for him. Black voters, Asian voters, Hispanic voters, even liberal Jews. He grew with all of these different voting blocks. Those people did not just become Republicans overnight, but what Donald Trump has done is he has made them more willing to consider a Republican candidate for office. So I feel great about where we're at mechanically. What we're going to have to wait for is next summer. If what we did this summer, tax policy,
blocking and tackling.
If that has us growing, the economy growing by the spring, the summer, the fall, we're in a great place, Hugh.
Congressman Tom Emmer, keep coming back. Always good to see you, Congressman. I appreciate it. And to all of our friends up in Minnesota cold, we like to keep you well represented on the radio. Thank you, Minnesota 6. Keep sending us congressmen like Tom Emmer throughout that entire state. We'd be better off. Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by myphdweightloss.com. And they are. They're a great sponsor. They sponsored the show for years. Dwayne went on My PhD Weight Loss and lost 50 pounds, kept off 40 of it. Might want to lose 10 before the holidays. 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
But yesterday we were talking about the challenge of Thanksgiving for people who are on the My PhD Weight Loss program. I did some research for you, Dwayne.
Okay.
Do you know what else you can have?
There's lots of things you can have.
I know, but I got one that's great. You can eat as much as you want.
Okay.
Yams.
No.
Yes, you can have as many yams as you want.
According
Yam
to
it up.
who?
Yam it up.
What makes you think that?
Because it's orange.
The Orange Food Group counts?
Well, the Orange Food Group is generally not on the My PhD
No,
Weight
it's generally
Loss.
not.
But the yams are. Look it up. They're good for you.
They're really high in carbs.
Yams?
Yeah, they're a what we would call a root vegetable. Potatoes, carrots, yams.
Yams?
Oh yes. Yeah, no, that's
Yam.
that's not what you want.
Yum. Just I'm kind of gobsmacked by the yam revelation.
Are you?
I thought they were so absolutely disgusting.
Are you having a Popeye? Are you having a Popeye stroke?
Well, no, I was just thinking they're so bad. They taste so bad. They must be good for you.
No, sadly no. No, you're looking for lower carbs, and lower carbs are vegetables that typically don't come out of the ground.
Go to myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900.
Yams.
Don't eat the yams.
No, don't eat the
That's
yams.
our advice for the day. Second piece of advice for the day, do take your Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. They keep my studios going up north, out west, and here in the Beltway, and I take it every day. Did 6 miles this morning. Got past 50, so I said I'm going to stretch it out here and go double what I've been doing on Monday and Tuesday. Not sore, feeling good because of Relief Factor, which I take on air. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you see the 4 pills right there, and I take them. Sip of Trader Joe's water, and down they go. Why? Because they're beautifully made. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega. Combined, they help your body's natural anti-inflammatory system keep away the minor aches and pains that some people treat with over-the-counter medications like Advil and Aleve and Tylenol and ibuprofen and aspirin. Don't do that. Bad for your esophagus. Try Relief Factor, the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. I've been taking it for 12, soon to be 13 come January. Love my Relief Factor. Get some yourself. Now, let me tell you as well, there's a story. I'm waiting for the bubble story. I'm waiting for the NVIDIA earnings. I'm hoping they're very good, because I want people to have time to get out of the bubble rather than have the bubble burst. Just kind of ease out. But we'll report that next hour. In the meantime, though, the 10-year Treasury dropped a little bit yesterday, and that is good for AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. AndrewandTodd.com are with Union Home Mortgage. They are a bank. They lend you the money to buy a house. They underwrite the loan. They start at the beginning with the phone call, or you go to their website, AndrewandTodd.com, or you call them at 888-888-1172. They figure out what it is you want to do. Do you want to refinance, or do you want to buy a house for yourself to live in? You might want to buy a rental property. You might want to buy a second home. Whatever it is you want to do, if it's residential real estate, they do it. If you even want to buy a fourplex for an investment and live in one of them, they do that. They do it all, and they do it well. They've done it for me. They've done it for Dwayne. They've done it for my family. They've done it for tens of thousands of my listeners over the many, many years that Andrew and Todd have been serving the mortgage banking needs of this audience. And you know what? I've never had a complaint. That's pretty remarkable. I get complaints about pretty much every sponsor. I've never had a complaint about Relief Factor or my PhD, but I do get complaints about some sponsors, and I try and answer them and be upfront with you. Never had one complaint about AndrewandTodd.com. If I had a bulletin board full of the fan mail I get about them, it would be a very big bulletin board. Why? Genuinely wonderful people, genuinely great professionals, and they are not one size serves all, and they will not upsell you, and they won't let you buy too much house, and they won't let you buy the wrong loan. If you're a veteran, no money down, they do VA loans. If you're a first-time home buyer, they know FHA. If you're a senior, you got to get some money out of your house. They do reverse mortgages. Whatever your lending need is, 888-888-1172. Call AndrewandTodd.com. Mary Catherine Ham is the host of the 2 podcasts that you love the most, Normally and Getting Hammered. She's also a Fox News contributor. Mary Catherine, I have to discuss 2 subjects with you. Both of them are not really fun. One is Epstein, and the other is the AI bubble. Which would you like to do first?
Let's just go with Epstein.
Okay, we'll go with Epstein. Last night, I got asked by John Roberts on Special Report what I thought about Epstein, and I kind of jumped the gun. It makes me mad. Here's what I had to say, cut number 1.
Democrats here have trying to pin this on President Trump, but the blowback. Stacey Plaskett, Larry Summers, who said, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein. It goes on, but he talked to Epstein for years after the sexual things first became public. So who comes out of this worse?
It's a frag grenade that hits a bunch of people that we don't know. There are at least 36 victims of Jeffrey Epstein who he abused, that I feel for them that they're back in the center light. It will not take a dent in Donald Trump. He's got nothing to do with this. I believe him completely that this will absolutely bounce off of him. However, it is going to always tar the people who pushed it forward, including the Republicans who pushed it forward, because it's a stunt that was indifferent to the needs of the victim. It should make people angry, and it will hurt some innocent people. So, Mary Kat, that's my view. It was a stunt that was indifferent to the victims. What do you think about it?
I think you're basically right, and also that everyone was sort of having their hands forced to do it, partly because the initial deal given to Jeffrey Epstein that sort of created the mythos around this was a sweetheart deal, right? There's always been something weird here, and I don't think this is going to solve the conspiracy theories. Whatever comes out, people will just say, oh, well, they didn't give us all the things we needed. I, too, am sympathetic that I think there are victims, and there are going to be sort of people on the periphery of these communications that didn't do anything wrong but are mentioned who are going to be part of this as well. But I think Trump in particular, because this is a stunt that is directed at him at the moment, needed to say, let's get this out and move on. And that's the stage of the game that we were at. But like, a lot of people view this as a decoder ring for all of elite corruption, and I don't think that's what you're going to find in these files. I also agree with you that this feels very much like Russiagate, where everyone was like, there's a scoop, there's a scoop, there's a scoop, there's a scoop every 5 minutes in media, because they want it to be a scoop that takes down Donald Trump, but it's not really there. The story's not there. And in this case in particular, I think we have we have contraindicators that he was, in fact, kicking people out of Mar-a-Lago for this bad behavior. And so I think it's not what they think it is or want it to be, and we will find that out as it is released. But it won't solve the conspiracy. In your problems. Normally podcast, do you think the normies think Epstein's got anything to do with Trump? Because we're Beltway people. I just think it's ludicrous, because we would have found out about it years ago, given the number of lawyers and eyes on these files. But do the normies believe that? So that's my take, that this is, we would have known about it by now if there was this bombshell here. On the normie side, yes, there are people who care about this, because I think once you get to Netflix documentary, then it's a normie issue, right? And people have this sort of broad suspicion about elites getting better treatment than we would get in this situation, and that's why they're mad about it. But the explicit Trump-Epstein connection, I don't know that matters to them. And also, this is not a high-tier issue of concern for normal people. Their other day-to-day lifestyle concerns are much bigger than this. So I think it is
let me go to one of
a parlor game going on here.
In 13 minutes, the markets close. Sometime in the next hour, NVIDIA publishes its results. Either they'll be super and duper and the AI euphoria will continue, or the bubble could break. If the bubble breaks, I think it's going to be bad. Now, I've got no dog in this fight. I'm not invested in anything that's remotely connected to AI. Zero exposure. The Republicans get blamed if a bubble goes off that everyone knows is a bubble.
Yes, I think they do, in part. Always people give presidents a lot of credit for good economies and a lot of blame for bad economies, and it's not always their fault. In this case, yeah, I'm concerned that this is a promise and not a real product that's being valued here. And I have other concerns about AI as well, where it's like the idea that we're creating this product that even the greatest minds in the country are rarely and not really deeply thinking about how it could change the landscape if it reaches all these promises, paired with a citizenry that is forgetting how to think and has specifically been not taught how to think during elementary, middle, and high school, and it turns out into college if you look at this UCSD study. The combination of those two things, like machines that could think and humans who can't, if we're producing that combination, not good for the society.
You just mentioned the hot button in the Hewitt household, because UCSD, University of California, San Diego, is a magnificent university in La Jolla. We've had a lot of friends go there, including my daughter's best friend. Those stats were stunning. A 300% increase in remedial math. Kids can't read at the 6th grade level, and they're going to a UC. I don't know how we fix that, Mary Catherine.
Well, I was reading a piece in The Atlantic called A Recipe for Idiocracy, and the way you fix it is that you go back to normal things that conservatives think are normal and good that libs have been pushing back on for 20 years. And that is, standardized testing is a good indicator of where you are, and it's not racist. High expectations are good, and having people meet them is good. Consequences for not meeting those goals is good. Keeping schools open instead of closed is good. All the things that the left told you were going to be super great turned out to teach people not to think. And then after they weren't achieving, what public schools did in many cases was cover up that they weren't learning. And so then you send people into UCSD who are not tested by standardized tests because California has decided that's unfair. And you get a bunch of people who reveal that they were never taught anything the whole way through. And that is tragic.
Mary Catherine, the biggest difference. The biggest difference between you and me is not 3 decades. It's that I have the college application process behind me for my children, and you have 4 cycles ahead of you. And I don't know if you're looking forward to that. There's fun involved, right? Visits. But at this point, if you had to just guess, would you rather your offspring take a year or 2 off after high school or go right in?
I think maybe take a year or 2 off and get an internship or something. I do think like we're gonna have to do an evaluation of whether college is worth it at all for my kids at the rate that I'm hearing news out of colleges. Like we have a lot of thinking to do.
Yep, I think you're right, and I think that's the normally next edition, and I hope soon the next Getting Hammered edition. Follow Mary Catherine on X at MK Hammer. Listen to Normally, like and subscribe to Getting Hammered. One of our very best sponsors is BestHotGrill.com. BestHotGrill.com. I tell you about it every day this time of year because many of you are thinking right now, or you should be, about getting Christmas presents for your best employees or your best clients or your best accounts or your best something, maybe for yourself. And that would be BestHotGrill.com. They make the Solaire infrared grill. Very best grill made in America. And they make them in 5 different sizes. If you want to buy it for yourself, get the mother of all Solaire infrared grills. Try it before you buy it. They're all made in America. They're all fabulous. I've got one on both coasts, and Dwayne's got one, and we swear by them. But if you want to buy a bunch of them for your clients, like if you're a law firm and you're thinking, what do we do this year? Do we give them another bottle of booze? No. Go get them the smaller, the next size up, or maybe even the middle edition of the Best Hot Grill, and they'll love you forever.
And you know why now's the time to do it? They're running a Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 25% off special.
I did not know that. Rhett did not tell me.
Yes, he did. It's in your email. They're running a Black Friday special up to a $650 value. Now is the time to buy.
Well, I'm glad you told me that because no one told me. But I don't mind, Rhett. I don't care if you're writing to Dwayne, you're not writing to me. That's okay. We still love our Best Hot Grill, and we also love the Fireballs. And this is the prize for yourself. When you buy all your clients all that stuff, dress up your fireplace with the Rasmussen Fireballs, patented, trademarked because they're the best, and they're fabulous in your fireplace. But go look at besthotgrill.com. How much are they giving off, Dwayne?
25% off of some of their items, and it's up to a $650 value, depending on the item you buy.
Well, you got to go to find out, besthotgrill.com. Finally, let me tell you about Americans for a Balanced Budget. They're the last sponsor of the hour. I'm coming back with a Meet Segal, part 2 of our interview, but I do want to tell you about StopHealthCostHikes.com. There is going to be an appropriations bill having to do with Obamacare, and we're going to have to decide what to do. A lot of you say don't give anything to anyone. I don't agree with that because of a number of people got screwed by Obamacare, people who don't make much money, who work very hard, who lost their insurance, lost their doctors, and are forced into the state exchanges. And those people ought to get a tax credit. That's like giving them the money. All right, it's a direct dollar-for-dollar tax credit. But it's not for rich people, not even for upper middle class people. It ought to be for working people who got screwed by Obamacare. Now, Obamacare has comprehensively failed, and we need something to replace it. But in the year end, in the bargaining that goes on, we don't say yes to the ridiculous subsidies for everybody that Joe Biden passed because we can't afford it. But we do carve out tax credits for people who got screwed by Obamacare and stop health cost hikes. StopHealthCostHikes.com from Americans for a Balanced Budget. StopHealthCostHikes.com. Coming right back with Amit Segal. We will also keep our eye on the market and let you know what NVIDIA does. Is the party over? Does it go around for another quarter? Here is part 2 of my interview with Amit Segal, author of A Call at 4 a.m. Question number 2. You quote Moshe Dayan, famous in America as he is in Israel, saying to Ariel Sharon, "You'll be called in only when there is a catastrophe." Is there any other person like that left in Israel that everyone would turn to in the middle of a catastrophe like 10/7? It seems to me Netanyahu, had he been on the sidelines, would have been summoned in, but he was already there.
Exactly.
But is there someone on the off stage in whom most Israelis have great confidence in a military sense?
Unfortunately not. Moshe Dayan was, or Ariel Sharon were two figures. Netanyahu, let's you know that Yahya Sinwar planned the October 7th attack. He had scheduled it before to October 6th, 2022, when Yair Lapid was prime minister and Netanyahu was the head of the opposition. I guess that if the October 7th attack would have occurred 1 year and 1 day before, Netanyahu was this man to be called only under catastrophe. However, the catastrophe happened on his watch, and therefore, to be honest, I don't see any figure like this in 2025.
So it's not Naftali Bennett.
No, he can actually earn politically from the situation, and he's gaining ground in the polls, but it's way too early to say. And his support emanates mainly from the center left these days. So it's not like Sharon that all of a sudden, from being an infamous politician, became a consensus. He got the support of 62% of the Israelis in the election of 2001. So no, there is no one that gets even remotely close to this situation.
I think question number 4. At the end of A Call at 4 a.m., I was under the impression there is no left in Israel, that the left is gone. Right. They might have Haaretz and they might have a few coffee klatches and debating clubs, but they're gone. Yeah. Am I right about that they're just not a viable political force in Israel anymore?
You are absolutely right when you speak about the left in terms of Palestinian statehood. The number, by the way, is 5.5% of the Israeli public, which it used to be, by the way, closer to 30 years ago. So it vanished.
Wow.
But in terms of identity, there is a significant center left consisting of, for instance, Lieberman and Bennett and Lapid. So the path to victory for the center left is to base its policy not on compromises to the Palestinians, but about, public transportation on Saturdays, or sending the Haredi youngs to the army, things like this.
You've got job security for life. Your political system is so kaleidoscopic that you are never not going to be working if you want to. Okay, question number 4, page 40, you write, or number 5. Israelis are, in many respects, just another frightened Jewish community in a 2,000-year-long chain of frightened Jewish communities, even if they are larger and more independent than those that came before. Now, you wrote this book before 10/7. Do you still believe that after the astonishing march of, it was a disaster and a massacre on 10/7, but the IDF and Mossad and the government has just amazed the world since then. Do you still think it's true about the frightened Jewish community in a 2,000-year long stretch of frightened Jewish communities?
Even more than October 7th. Many people compared the October 7th to the Holocaust. But to be honest, it's more similar to the pogroms, organized or spontaneous massacres in Eastern Europe in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. This was a pogrom in Israel, and yes, it's even more valid than when I had written it in the first place, because no one envisioned back then in 2021 or 2022 that 5,000 terrorists are going to just storm into villages, behead babies, rape women, torture males. We just heard today about a hostage named Guy Gilboa Dalal that said that he was sexually attacked by his hostage takers. So yes, I think it's still valid.
All right. So that penultimate question, I read Herzl's book after 10/7 for the first time, and I've kind of known Israeli history from the Balfour Declaration forward, but I didn't know about Herzl and the Switzerland thing. Do you think Herzl dreamed big enough? I wrote a column for Fox this week. Israel's a superpower. It's a nuclear and intelligence superpower. It's America's strongest ally. It's got the longest reach, the hardest power. Do you think Herzl ever dreamed that the Jewish state he imagined would become a superpower?
He thought about Israel as a soft power, a European soft power in the Middle East. What he envisioned was a sort of a German-speaking European country with people with ties and hats, and not this Middle Eastern country. And he believed that this country would be established peacefully. That's why he actually would the emperor of the Ottoman Empire, met with many Muslim leaders. I don't think he imagined that in order for Israel to live and to actually prosper in the Middle East, it would need to have nuclear bombs or the strongest air force in the Middle East. But I do think that although Herzl spoke only German, he would be so happy to see Israel these days, because it's way more than he envisioned. To see Israel with 10 million citizens, with a large Arab minority, with a GDP that actually outnumbers Germany's and the UK's and France's, it's something amazing even for me in 2025, let alone for Herzl in 1898.
It is really a remarkable story. Last question. I love this line in A Call at 4 a.m. more than any other one, because it applies wherever politics is free. Page 59, quote, "Politics is a storyteller's festival at a Galician marketplace." I get it. Would you explain it to people? Because I think it's perfect.
Okay, so there are people who think that politics is about like an Excel table in which you actually check which leader would offer you more tax deductions, or would fight, crime better. I don't see politics as such. I think that in order to win an election, at the end of the day, you have to gather enough people around you. And the way to do it for human beings is to tell a persuasive story. Now, I'll give an example. Obama told the American public a story about colorblind America, in which everyone has an opportunity. Trump told a story about America which is about to collapse if he's not elected. Netanyahu told a story about a superpower in the Middle East that can fight and defeat its enemies. And so on and so on. Now, for Jews, storytelling is our this is the art of our forefathers. So this Galician fair of Thursdays and Mondays is exactly this very same thing. And in that respect, it's still so interesting for me to see what is the story told by which politician. And I think Israel is the best storytellers in the world.
Yeah, you and I have the best jobs for our country. I've done this for 35 years, and I think politics is endlessly fascinating, the best job. But I want to ask, I finished with a bonus question. You point out repeatedly that the question at the center of Israel, are you a Jew or are you an Israeli? Amit Segal, are you a Jew or are you an Israeli?
I'm a Jewish Israeli. But to be honest, I thought yesterday about this miracle of Israel being established in 1948 against all the odds, against seven armies. I'm as the third generation of this country. I used to take it for granted. Following October 7th, I remind myself every day that there is a reason why we're here. And the reason we came to Jerusalem, where I'm speaking to you from right now, and not from Uganda or Argentina, like many Zionists thought, was because this was the biblical land of Israel. So the answer for your question is, first and foremost, I'm Jewish.
Well, I appreciate the answer. I want to again tell my audience, A Call at 4 a.m., wonderful book. I look forward to hearing you on the Insider edition of Call Me Back, Dan Senor's fabulous podcast. And I look forward to having you back on the show soon. I mean, thank you for your generous amount of time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Don't go anywhere. I'm coming back with United States Senator John Curtis of Utah. And if NVIDIA has reported results, which they haven't yet, we still don't know, I'll let you know what that is as well. I am so pleased to welcome for the first time to the Hugh Hewitt Show, Senator John Curtis of Utah, Republican. He's a freshman. He just got started. Before that, of course, he was in the House. Before that, he was Mayor of Provo. Senator Curtis, welcome. Good to have you. How do you like life as a freshman in the Senate?
Well, it's been an interesting ride, but I'll just say this. There's a reason people run from the House for the Senate and not the Senate for the House. It's a great body. I've enjoyed both places, but I love where I'm at.
I want to talk to you about each of your committees, but before I do that, your LDS, you went to BYU. You're probably friends with my good pal O'Brien, Ambassador O'Brien.
Sure.
My question is, did you do a mission?
I did. A very long time ago, in 1979, in Taiwan, Taichung, Taiwan.
Oh, do you speak Mandarin still?
I do, not as well as I'd like. I try to practice a little bit every day. I have an assistant who speaks Mandarin, and we change vocabulary words every day. And I do my best to keep up on it.
The reason I ask that is I teach law. And on the first day of each semester, I ask, where are my LDS kids? And, you know, there's a little bit of a shock among the 70 to 100 people, and I'll get 4 or 5 hands. Say, who went on a mission? And I'll get 2 or 3 hands. And then I use those 3 for the first 3 days of class because they're not intimidated by anything. Is that your experience, that once you've been a missionary, especially in a tough place, you're not going to be intimidated by a law professor?
I think that's right. As a 19-year-old, I was knocking on doors, preaching Christianity to the Buddhists, and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from home. And I think you grew up a lot. I've always felt, I wish everybody could have a similar experience, some kind of service for their church or their country at that age. I think we'd have a very different country.
Now, the other thing I like about LDS is that you never stop working. The church is run by volunteers. What's your current gig in the stake? Are you in an official position in D.C., or do they give you a pass because you're going back and forth?
So I attend my church services out in Utah, and I have an assignment dealing with our temples there, and I love it. And you're right. We all love to serve. That's part of the gig.
One of my best friends from broadcast days is the late Elder Maxwell. He and I got to be pretty good friends, and he was a political junkie. And that was undisclosed. He'd call me up and we'd just talk politics. How many people in Utah are political junkies?
Well, in my circle, it feels like everybody is, but we have our share of people too who their lives are full of kids and soccer games and scout camps, but I think we probably have an overabundant share.
Yeah, I think you index higher for informed citizens. With that in mind, what was the reaction to the shutdown when you went back and forth to Utah?
Well, Hugh, I call it the backwards day shutdown. It was very different than any shutdown. And part of that backwardness is the president did a lot to alleviate pain points. And so a lot of Utahns for weeks didn't really feel any impact of the shutdown. We have our national parks, but they were still open, not completely, but good enough. And so it wasn't until those pain points, SNAP and the air traffic controllers started to surface up before I really heard a lot about it.
I'm glad to hear Utah was not that impacted. Now I want to turn to your committees. You're on Environment and Public Works. I care a lot about that because before I retired, when I was Robert's partner, I did Waters of the United States Endangered Species for 30 years. Is there going to be any kind of permitting reform at all out of the next year?
There needs to be. I believe that's one of the most critical things we can do for our country, for inflation, for national security. And I'm in conversations literally almost every hour. I was at a dinner last night with a bunch of colleagues. I talked to my colleagues on the floor today. I was at a meeting with Joe Manchin a week ago. This is a nonstop topic. It's important that we get it right, and we don't want to go too fast, but it's really time to move on it.
I hope you do. Second committee that you're on is Commerce. And right now, I think there's an AI bubble. I haven't seen the NVIDIA earnings yet. Do you think there is an AI bubble? And if so, what will its deflation do to the economy?
Well, I probably the best thing I've heard somebody describe it to was the bubble that we had in IT, a number of years ago. And while the market dropped, technology didn't really slow down. It just dropped in the market because it was overvalued. And I think that, in my opinion, I'm not an expert on it, but I think if you see a drop, it's only going to be in things that are overvalued. But this is still a thing that's a big thing, and it's going to be a part of our lives.
How much of your time as a member of that committee is given over to AI and AI-related issues?
Well, and a lot. And, it's not only on that committee, as you talked about, for instance, permitting reform. There's a role for AI in that. There's a role in my office for answering constituents. There's a role in almost everything we do for AI. I use it in my research. I just think that it's more and more part of our lives. And in that committee, of course, we wrestle with the big question of regulation. And part of the conversation is, if we get this wrong, if we overregulate, we know this will just go overseas, particularly to China. If we underregulate, we also do our constituents a misservice. So I think the members of that committee are very aware that this has to be done right.
All right, my last question, you're on foreign affairs, and that's really one of my passions, defense and foreign affairs. President Trump has talked about what can we do for the Christians who are under persecution in Nigeria from Boko Haram. Do you think there's anything the United States can't? We're not forward deploy. We don't have a footprint in Africa other than Djibouti. What do you think we can do?
Well, the president and Senate and House members all have a bully pulpit. And if nothing else, the president speaking out can be very effective and bring it to people's attention. So I wouldn't underestimate that tool in the president's toolbox, and quite frankly, ours as well. The president, go ahead, yeah.
Well, when you get to on foreign affairs, you usually pick a region of the world. Have you picked a region of the world yet on which to concentrate?
I chair the Western Hemisphere subcommittee, but I'll be honest with you, that my strong suit is Taiwan, is China, that part of the world. But they asked me to take that assignment, so I'm enjoying that because I'm learning a lot about that part of the world. That's not my strongest suit. I also spent 6 months living in Jerusalem back in 1978. Love that part of the world as well. But I call foreign relations my guilty pleasure because I actually really, really enjoy all of it.
Oh, I think it's the best committee. I like armed services too. But what were you doing in Jerusalem for 6 months?
So you probably know Brigham Young University has an extension over there. And can you imagine, as an 18-year-old, not only did I have that Taiwan experience, but I spent 6 months living in Jerusalem, studying the people, the culture, the religion, and that has totally shaped my view of our current situation with Israel and the U.S. support of Israel. And I wish everybody could spend 6 months over there. I think we would view this very differently if people had had that experience. I'll just mention it real quickly. I was there the day that Jimmy Carter signed the peace accord with Anwar Sadat and Malcolm Begin. And if you ever visit my office, you'll see the Jerusalem Post from the next day that I have hanging in my office.
I will look forward to that and many other visits. Senator John Curtis, great to make your acquaintance. Good to have you on the program. Thanks for the
Thanks,
bio and the background. In after-hours trading, NVIDIA is up 4% because they beat earnings. I'll bring you more details on that as I get them. But I'm joined by Jonathan Williams, president of the American Legislative Exchange Council. He's out at the Ronald Reagan Ranch. And John Williams is CEO of ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, great sponsor of our show. We'll be together in 2 weeks in Fort Worth, Texas, December 2nd and 3rd. I hope you will go to alec.org/Hugh and get tickets. John, what takes you to the Reagan Ranch? I love the Reagan Ranch in Santa Barbara.
Well, isn't it a beautiful place? We're hosting a great gathering for ALEC lawmakers here this week, talking about some of the big economic and fiscal issues of the day. And then, of course, getting a tour from our good friends at the Young America's Foundation of Rancho del Cielo. So an incredible week here. And just as you know well, Hugh, nearly a spiritual experience for those of us who know and love Ronald Reagan and his work to be up there and see what it was like to be Reagan the man, right, in the ranch. And just so much happened there in world events.
When you're in the ranch and you see President and Mrs. Reagan's twin beds, the old steel poster beds, they're tied together by cord. It's really sweet. It's a wonderful place. John, I just had on Senator Curtis from Utah. And, of course, Utah always wins richstatespoorstates.com, which people can go to and get their copy. We're talking about Utah and about permitting reform. But you're in the belly of the beast. How can Utah be so free and California be so freely screwed up?
It's a good point, Hugh, and it's actually, in a way, part of the strength of federalism, right? The states get to choose their own path forward, and whether the states choose rightly or wrongly and wisely or not, it's still within their prerogative to make those choices. And, as a result, over the last 10 years, as you know well, California is down more than 2 million of its residents voting with their feet to other states. And where are they going? They're going to places like Utah that really value taxpayers and economic opportunity. Great piece in the Deseret magazine just talking about that effect of Utah and the surrounding states in the Mountain West performing very well in rich states, poor states, and their emphasis on the policies that matter, not just for growth for, big companies, and that's great too, but growth for small businesses and just the small business sector being especially robust and in a growth-oriented format in those states today because of the policy choices that they're making so different than those in California. I mean, just this morning, Hugh, I was reading the brand new report from the California legislative analyst that suggested the California fiscal condition is deteriorated by another $5 or $6 billion in the current fiscal year, with deficits now annually looking to be at about 35 billion with a B going forward. I mean, Hugh, that's larger than a lot of state budgets in total. And to see what's happening in California is just a travesty.
That imperils public finance. We're going to have to devote an entire segment sometime to what does California do to get out of the hole. But I want to look at the Maryland hole. I voted with my feet, and the fetching Mr. Hewitt, we moved to Virginia 10 years ago. May have to vote with our feet again, depending on what the crazy Democratic legislature does now that they won a big win in the off year. But Maryland is not an option. That's a bad, boy, they rank badly, John.
They sure do. And Virginia runs the risk of becoming Maryland South very quickly if the progressives get their way. But Maryland's a bottom 10 state. They're a state that has lost 250,000 residents over the last decade. And then, surprise, surprise, they blow through their budget surplus that the great Governor Larry Hogan created. They raise taxes, and yet perpetual budget deficits once again because they just don't solve the inherent issue of overspending. And that's something that Virginia needs to look very carefully at if they want to follow the policies of Maryland and fall into that trap. I mean, at least we have West Virginia, Hugh, in the area where people want to stay in the Metro D.C. area, not just lower taxes, but school choice and all kinds of other great policies in the mix there.
Yeah, West Virginia, we're going to have to talk about whether or not people can make the drive easily from West Virginia to the Beltway. Let's close by talking about what happened to SNAP benefits across the United States. Some states stepped up and made up the shortfall during the shutdown. Others didn't. What did that reveal to us, John Williams, about the state of the state's fiscal policies?
I think it reveals back to the idea of federalism. Those states that wanted to take that seriously can act within their own means. And if they had a rainy day sitting there and responsibly budget and did the ALEC budget playbook, they had money sitting there to take care of those that were vulnerable during the instability of the federal government shutdown. And, in a $38 trillion national debt era, that's going to happen more and more. So, I mean, states need to take this more seriously and govern for themselves. And at the end of the day, I think that does show that federalism does and can work when we allow it to work. And I think that's going to be a big question for the next decade, is how do states react to the additional pressures being put on them by federal overreach, and then this idea that the federal government cannot come in this $38 trillion scenario to bail out the states. States need to take care of their own taxpayers.
We're going to have to see if richstatespoorstates.com doesn't include points for having a rainy day fund. Remember, ALEC is gathering in Fort Worth, Texas, December 2nd and 3rd. I'll be broadcasting live from there with Jonathan and a bunch of our favorite people. Go to alec.org/Hugh and get your tickets today. In Fort Worth, December 2nd and 3rd, alec.org/Hugh. Joined by our friend Selena Zito, columnist of The World, because she writes for the Washington Post, she writes for the New York Post, for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, for the Washington Examiner. Everything she writes can be found at selenazito.com, and you can follow her on X at ZitoSelena. And last week she was in the Oval with her buddy, the President of the United States, along with her grandkids. And normally I would talk about that. We're showing the video if you're watching the Salem News Channel from the ReliefFactor.com studio. But I want to talk instead about Steve Lipscomb, Selena, because I was very touched by your column. I gather a lot of people were. Tell us about him and tell us about how the story came to your attention.
So Steve Lipscomb was a Marine. He enlisted the day after September 11th in 2001. Young man from West Virginia at that time. He was one of the first men on the ground in Fallujah. And he served his country. He earned a Bronze Star. He earned the Purple Heart, among numerous other recommendations from the military. He came home after serving in the military. He married his sweetheart, and they had 2 children. And he took his life, his sort of commitment to service from the military into a coal mine. And he was a supervisor in Rolling Thunder mine in West Virginia. And
now I want to ask it right there. Have you ever been you've been in coal mines, you've written about it. I have never heard of Rolling Thunder Mine until your column. Have you been in it? Did you know about it?
Yeah, I knew about it, but I've never been in that mine. But it was very similar to the Elk Fork mine I was just in with Dave McCormick a few weeks ago. About 1,200 feet underground. The accident happened at the Long Wall. The Long Wall is the place where they chip away with this big machinery at the coal seam. And these guys have maps. They know exactly where everything is. And I cannot stress this enough. The amount of safety precautions that these men and women, about 10% of coal miners are women, go through, and the safety apparatuses that are in place in these mines is extraordinary. And it is also down there, you are a team, and everybody has everybody else's back. It's a really incredible experience. And
so what happened to Mr. Lipscomb?
They hit an unknown well of water. And that sounds like, oh, it's water. Well, it was 30 million gallons of water. He got 17 men out and then was swept away and died. He was the last man out. He saved all 17 members of his crew. He took charge. He got them out. He got them to safety. And then he was swept away. His body was found 4 days later. And it was very perilous conditions. Even these mine rescue men and women go through incredible, dangerous situations to get in there and rescue someone. So there was a lot that happened for a lot of people to save this guy, and they just couldn't.
Selena, between the time that they hit the wall of water or opened it up until the 16 got out, what kind of a time frame are we talking about?
Under an hour.
So it's going very, very fast.
Quickly. Yeah, he evacuated them quickly. This is a man who saved men and women in Fallujah. This is a man who saved men in a coal mine. He served, and to get into the psyche of a coal miner, they take their job as something very patriotic, because what they do is for the betterment of their country. When you go flip a light switch on, a coal miner made that happen. When you cross a bridge, when you whatever you do to make your life better when it comes to electricity, 7 times out of 10, a coal miner made that happen. But they also contribute to national security. Without coal, there's no coke, there's no steel. So these men and women look as though whatever they do every day is for the betterment of our lives.
So you wrote a remarkable tribute to Steve Lipscomb, and I'm glad that you did, underscoring his heroism, his life of service, and his sacrifice for his team. How did the story come to you, and how has it been received?
Well, there's over 1 million people have read it so far. The vice president put a beautiful tribute up today. The Department of War did, and just so many people have read it. And that's what I wanted people to do. And if you go and read it now, you can find it on my Twitter account. At the very bottom, there is a link to his obituary where you can put something on the wall. I really hope that people put tributes up to Steve and to his wife and his 2 kids. The people should say his name. People should know his name. In our profession, we focus way too much on the frivolous and the silly. There have been 29 miners that have died this year, coal miners that have died. And we don't talk about this at all. And these men and women are, every day your life is impacted by someone that has dug coal out of the ground for you.
Now, how did you become aware of Mr. Lipscomb? Did his family tell you? Did you see a newspaper account? Was it a wire story? How did you know?
So my first reading in the morning isn't the New York Times or the Washington Post. I go and look at local newspapers. I spend a good hour looking at local newspapers all across the country, and that's how I found out.
Well, it's a fabulous column. I don't know if there's a GoFundMe for the family, but if there is, you'll probably find it at the obituary or Steve Lipscomb, Lipscomb, the Rolling Thunder Mine, an American hero, and America's columnist, Selena Zito, wrote it up. And Selena, I'm glad that you did. Follow Selena over at X at Zito Selena. All right, so reverse her name, at Zito Selena. And you can get all of her columns from all of her sources if you simply ask for them over at her website, selenazito.com. Thank you, Selena. I do want to remind you that Relief Factor keeps my studios going up north, out west, and of course here inside the Beltway. And they do so because I take the product every single day. Got my 6 miles in this morning. It got back up to 50 degrees, so I got back up to 6 miles. I am unwilling to run in the rain and the cold anymore, or trundle or walk or do anything. I stay indoors. But it was okay. It's a gray Beltway day. So I got out there and I feel fine. It's been 3s and 4s for the last few weeks. And so I thought, okay, we got a couple hours here. Let's go for 6. And had some podcasts to listen to and feel fine. Because Relief Factor works. It really does help your anti-inflammatory system keep away the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You're definitely getting older. You ought to be getting your exercise in, whether it's weightlifting or swimming or running or cycling or trundling or just walking. The absolute minimum you ought to be doing is 150 minutes of serious sustained walking a week, 150 minutes, or some kind of weightlifting or some kind of stress activity, whatever lifts your boat, do it, and do it with Relief Factor. The starter pack, 3-week supply, $19.95, less than $1 a day. All you have to do is call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief to order it. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or visit their website, hunt around, find the starter pack, $19.95. You take 3 packets a day for the first week, 2 packets a day for the second week, and then you're on a packet a day for as long as you take Relief Factor. And I've been taking it almost 13 years, and I will continue to do so, not because they're a sponsor, but because I like being rid of the minor aches and pains that otherwise require Aleve or aspirin. I can't take NSAIDs, so I like my Relief Factor. Now, a word about NVIDIA. Boy, am I relieved. They had a good quarter. They beat every projected. They beat the street. They had a beat, and a good-sized beat. I mean, it's not the most extraordinary beat, but it's a good-sized beat. In an after-hours trading, they're up about 4%. Now, that's on top of them being up about 3% today, so they had a very good day if you're an NVIDIA stock owner, and that's great. I am relieved, because I began talking about the AI bubble this week, and I believe there is an AI bubble, but I think NVIDIA is one of the companies that is immune to it. But if they had had a crack in their earnings, then the music would have stopped, and a lot of people would have been left without a chair to sit in. In fact, in that old game, there would have been like 10 chairs less than we needed, and we don't have to worry about that for another quarter. That gives you a chance to reevaluate your investments, take profits, and realize that the, quote, AI trade, close quote, may not be where you want to be, and the economy may want to be a little more balanced than it is right now. David Bahnsen, I have scheduled for tomorrow. I didn't want to have him on before NVIDIA earnings because I want you to hear him after a big blowout quarter when euphoria is there and people are saying, yay, go AI. I still want you to hear there's a bubble and it could hurt you. I'm going out west to talk to Steve Hilton, who should be California's next governor when the disaster that is Gavin Newsom leaves office. Steve, welcome back. I hate to bring you back on the bearer of bad news, but during the break I read that California is projected to have an $18 billion deficit this year, one that will go to $35 billion in 2027, 2028. Are you sure you want this job?
I was going to say, thanks a lot, Gavin, leaving me all that to clean up. Look, this is the consequence of big bloated government in a one-party regime where they haven't had any kind of check, any kind of accountability. It's totally corrupt. This is handouts to the unions. I'll just give you one example, one really sickening example. So in this year's budget, for the year that's about to start, Gavin Newsom announced when he did his final version of his budget this year, even as we had this year a $12 billion deficit, which he plugged the hole, as you have to in state government. States can't run deficits. He did $5 billion worth of accounting tricks, sending the scams forward to other years, and $7 billion he took from the reserves, from the rainy day fund this year. $7 billion. That's supposed to be for when there's a recession or when we have some serious emergency. He took $7 billion from the reserves. In the same budget, he increased spending on the bureaucracy in Sacramento. This is not even schools or law enforcement or anything real. Pure bureaucracy. The state agencies in Sacramento by $7 billion, the exact same amount. Why? Because that is all government unions who get that money, and he wants their votes and support when he runs for president. So this is the gravy train and the scam and the corruption that's going to have to end. In some ways, Hugh, I think it's almost helpful. Of course, we would never want this kind of overspending because it means we're massively overtaxed in California. But in some ways, it's helpful because it will be so obvious to the next governor, whoever they are, that we have to cut spending in California. We cannot go on like this. They have doubled the budget in the last 10 years, and yet everything in California is worse. And so we've got to rein this. We've got to get back to some kind of normal, common sense path for government spending.
I want you to win to save California because I love California. I've lived there most of my adult life. I left in 2016, and I'm not going back until they fix it. Maybe you will. Let's start by making sure people know your website, Steve. How do they find you to either contribute to your campaign or volunteer?
Well, both would be very, very helpful. We've got to build a volunteer army. They got the unions and their machine. It's stevehiltonforgovernor.com, F-O-R, stevehiltonforgovernor.com. We are really getting organized now with our volunteer army. There's a button that says get involved. And of course, we do need contributions. You know, we're starting from nothing here with this campaign, and they've got all these union donations and so on. We've got to beat this machine. I know we can do it because there's the majority for change in California. Every single poll now, very consistently, 60%, 62%, 65% say the state is going in the wrong direction. We know we need change. There's a majority for change, and we just need to put in front of people a positive, practical alternative to deal with the mess that they've made that has in particular hurt working class Californians, small businesses. They're the ones paying the price for the climate elitism that sends gas up to the highest costs in the country, electric bills more than double the national average, housing the highest costs in the country, all of that driven by these policies, and they hurt the working people of California the most.
Now, it's such a staggering number, an $18 billion deficit for a state, and it's going to double in 3 years.
I know.
So my question is, what would you do? How in the world do you turn this around? That's a crater. If it were a company, you would file for Chapter 11, but you can't. There is no bankruptcy chapter for the states.
Right. Well, let's just take some of the items, specific big ticket items. That $7 billion increase in bureaucracy that we're getting next year, that can go straight away, because one of my main tasks, in a sense, the main task that I will have, which I'm very much looking forward to. Remember, I've been, I was senior advisor in the UK government, and in that role, I was there trying to take on the bureaucracy and make change happen inside. I know how difficult it is, but now I know their tricks. That $7 billion increase that Gavin Newsom put in for the bureaucracy, gone. What about the $12 billion? Another increase in spending for free healthcare for illegal immigrants, when regular California citizens can't afford proper healthcare. That's going to be gone. So that's nearly $20 billion right there, just deleted from the budget. And then you look at the incredible amounts of waste that are being spent. I mean, just everywhere you look, just this growth in endless bureaucracy and red tape and intrusive nanny state government, bloated to the fullest extent possible, bossing us around, telling every business how to run itself. All of that needs to be cut back. All of that costs money, and that is where you start. I think we can actually, if you've got the right attitude, if you've got the right mindset and a determination to end the bloat, which I have, I think we can actually rein it in pretty quickly.
I hope you go and get the best brains in California and bring them together, because it's going to be a nightmare. Let me ask you about one small part of the nightmare. A study came out this week from the University of California, San Diego, one of the jewels in California. UCSD is beautiful. It's in La Jolla. I've got a lot of friends go there. A lot of my kids' friends went there. They've had to increase remedial math by 300% in 1 year. They can't read, they can't write, they can't do math coming out of California public schools. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I mean, by the way, I'm right there. Today I'm speaking to you from Torrey Pines. So you're right. These are an amazing part of our state. Look, it's a total crisis. I mean, what is it now on the nation's report card? 29% can read at grade level. And it's just a total catastrophe, because the public school system has been completely overtaken by ideologues, the teacher unions, driving out rigor in terms of the basics in favor of indoctrination. For example, with these catastrophic numbers on reading and math, what's happening right now in California? They are introducing, as a high school graduation requirement this year, an ethnic studies curriculum. Well, guess what that's got in it? I mean, the first version of it was so anti-Semitic that even Gavin Newsom sent it back. The second version isn't much better. Here's where we start. The governor appoints the State Board of Education, which is pushing all this nonsense. So we're going to kick out the ideologues and put in place common sense people and parents who will focus the system on actual education. But more than that, we're going to hold the system accountable, because right now it's almost impossible to determine the performance of individual schools or individual teachers. We're going to get that information out there. A grade for every school, a grade for every teacher. Then parents will have the information, and we're going to increase their power within the system. It's going to take time. The first step we can take is make the process of applying for a charter status for a school. Charter schools do much better than the regular public schools. That process has been made so complicated, of course, by Gavin Newsom, because the teacher unions hate it. But I've been talking to the leaders of that movement about how we make the process of converting to a charter much easier. That is something we can do pretty quickly in California. The long-term goal, real school choice, with the kind of revolution you're seeing in other states, that will take time. And that won't be something I can do straight away. But the accountability through better information and the conversion to charters, that's something that we can do quickly, as well as cleaning up the curriculum by appointing common sense people to the State Board of Education.
So I want people to go to Steve Hilton for Governor, FOR, Steve Hilton for Governor. My last question, Steve. Prop 50 passed. There wasn't much of an effort to stop it. Did that take any wind out of the reform sails? And we've got Gavin's corrupt chief of staff. There's so much going wrong out there. I don't know how you get up every day and look in the mirror and go out there. But did anyone lose heart because Prop 50 was basically a rigged game?
I'm sensing the opposite, honestly, Hugh. I'm sensing even more fire in the belly of everyone who wants change in California. I'm on the road the whole time. We're doing events all the time, every day. And I'm seeing almost the rage about this corrupt machine get even stronger. It's almost like an impetus to really show them that their arrogance will not sustain them. We cannot go on with this one-party rule, this assumption that they're going to be in power forever, never any consequence for their failures. They really, really are going to see change next year because people are really fed up with it. And I think the Prop 50 debacle actually strengthens our determination to kick these people out and bring common sense change to California.
Well, press on. Enjoy the event tonight. And I remind the audience, SteveHiltonForGovernor.com. Invest in him. Volunteer for him. Go to his website and say, I want to be a part of it. SteveHiltonForGovernor.com. SteveHiltonForGovernor.com. Talk to you again next month, Steve. One of the races I'm focusing on, because it really is a last chance for California. A $17 billion deficit announced today, heading towards a $35 billion deficit in 3 years. It's catastrophic for the Golden State, and maybe Steve Hilton can turn it around. I certainly know no Democrat's going to turn it around. Joined by Charles C.W. Cook, senior writer for National Review. Charles is one of the few people I like to talk to about con law who is not a lawyer because he actually reads the Constitution, understands it. But I want to talk to you about international constitutional law, Charles. Have you been following the debate over the Israeli Supreme Court, its powers, its overreach, and the attempt to reform it?
Yes, I'm not an expert on it, I will say up front, but it seems to me that this is an interesting question precisely because, unlike in the United States, we don't have in Israel a court that is interpreting a constitution that sits above the rest of the law, and so some of its behavior seems usurpatory to me.
I bring it up because the headline in the Times of Israel at this hour is, High Court orders the government to explain why it's not launching an October 7 state inquiry. Now, that's just a naked assertion of power.
Right.
By a court that does not rest upon a written or an unwritten constitution. What do you think that represents?
Well, if I were Israeli, I'd be very annoyed by that because it circumvents the democratic process. We see something similar in England, where Parliament created what they call the Supreme Court, but is nevertheless subordinate to Parliament, which then presumes to tell Parliament in some circumstances what to do. This is often a problem. It's a problem in Israel to a greater extent than that because the court seems to have taken upon itself the role of almost superintending the political process. You know, I think this is one of the things some people sometimes misunderstand about the United States. The Supreme Court only has power because the Constitution was ratified by the people, as were all of the amendments. If it weren't, it would have no position within our democratic republic whatsoever. So I have a problem with that in Israel. I have a problem with that in Britain. I don't have a problem with it in America. unless, as sometimes happens, the court in America decides to act outside of the law itself.
I agree. Now, this week, James Carville and others said it's time to pack the Supreme Court, do what you got to do, move it up, 12, 13, 14. To me, that's the end of the rule of law. I wanted to know what you think about packing the Supreme Court and about the argument that I make. The last time the court number moved, it was from 10 to 9, I believe, in 1867 or 1868. The 14th Amendment was ratified just after that. But I believe there's an argument that the 14th Amendment prohibits court packing above 10. What do you think about that?
Well, I think court packing would be a disaster. I think it would, as you say, be the end of the rule of law. It would also be the end of judicial review, which would be a big problem in a country that has a written constitution. The number, as critics of the Supreme Court, critics who are wrong, by the way, this is probably the best Supreme Court we've had in 80 years. The critics of the Supreme Court often say, well, the 9 number is not entrenched in the Constitution, and that's true. But there are times in American history at which traditions that have obtained since the beginning, or for a very long time, ought to be respected. I'm not talking here about violations of the Constitution becoming entrenched and thereby accepted. I'm talking about, for example, the tradition of presidents not running for a third term. That wasn't in the Constitution either, but it was very important to our system. And so in the 1940s, Congress got together and said, we're going to make this a rule rather than an expectation, after Franklin Roosevelt, before him Woodrow Wilson, tried but failed, and Grant, I think, flirted with it in the 19th century. I think the same thing ought to happen here with the Supreme Court. I think that the country ought to look at the current political situation, look at the number of people talking about court packing, and say, look, this has been a stable part of our system for 150 plus years. We will now make it mandatory and pass an amendment that limits the court to 9.
I would like to see that, but I would also like the argument to be made. Substantive due process enshrines as fundamental those rights which are anchored deep in American history and tradition. And Justice Scalia began that argument. It's been carried forward by Justices Alito, Thomas, Barrett, Kavanaugh, Roberts. Even Justice Kagan occasionally acknowledges it. I think a radical departure, anything above 10, you might want to add 1, that's the highest it's ever been, would shatter faith in the rule of law and I think bring the Republic perilously close to its end. Am I an alarmist?
No, you're not an alarmist. I'd be opposed to adding 1 for the record, because then you would get a bunch of ties. And I think 9 is a much better number. I think it's much better to have 5-4. When Scalia died and the court proceeded for a while without a 9th justice, the bad lower court decisions that would have been overturned by the Supreme Court often remain, just because the court was deadlocked. So if you're going to add 1, you should add 2. But you shouldn't add any, because there is no crisis at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is doing its job in a professional manner. The fact that it is originalist is a good thing, not a bad thing. Even if you don't think it's a good thing, what we have is a Supreme Court that has a slightly different approach than the one that it had before, not a wholesale abdication of its role within the American system. So, yeah, I think it would be a catastrophe. I think it would lead, as I say, not only to the dissolution of the rule of law, but effectively to the end of the written constitution, because if you can't enforce a constitution as law, then it's just a guidebook. That's it, and it would be disastrous for property rights and everything else. Now, I want to move from the highest court to the district court in Texas. 3-judge district court threw out the redrawn maps that were partisan, as every redistricting is, not unconstitutional, but 2 judges said they used race inappropriately. Jerry Smith, the dissenter, filed his dissent today. It's 100-plus pages, and boy, is he mad. He's spitting nails because he thinks the other 2 gamed him. What do you make of this, and do you expect the Supreme Court to take it up, reverse it, and leave Texas with its maps as the Texas legislators drew them? Well, we're in the middle of a redistricting fight. Neither side is right or wrong in the sense that this is a political question.
Correct.
But it is absurd for figures such as Gavin Newsom to insist that when his side does redistricting, it's good for the Republic, but when Republicans do redistricting, it's a threat to democracy. This is a tit-for-tat game now. And I think it's bizarre that this court has intervened and ruled that Texas's map must be thrown out and replaced with the 2021 map. Now, the dissent you mentioned, I thought was a little bit hot. If Sonia Sotomayor had written some of those sentences, they would have annoyed me because they don't betray judicial temperament. But he is right. The game that has been played here does seem very fishy indeed, including the timing of this. And he points out that they waited until he was away, and they didn't give him time to write his dissent. They said that they had to push this right now. The timing of it's important because of the way that it intersects with the elections and the registrations themselves. So I think this is a big problem. I do expect the court to pick it up. I mean, I think we're in a very strange situation with the whole area, Hugh, because we've now reached the point at which if we don't gerrymander in a particular way, then it's illegal. And if we do gerrymander in a particular way, then it's illegal. And both of them are held to be racist. So I think eventually the court is going to have to essentially extend its prior declaration, which is that this is an intrinsically political process and therefore cannot be touched judicially unless there is a prima facie case for racism.
Exactly the correct answer. One person, one vote. We go with Reynolds v. Sims, Baker v. Carr, absolutely. But it's a political process, and I hope the Supreme Court acts expeditiously to reverse the district court. Judge Smith was hot, but he got rolled, and that's not the way courts are supposed to operate. Charles C.W. Cook, follow him on X at Charles C.W. Cook. Listen to his podcast, which goes by the name of Charles C.W. Cook, and listen to him on the editors at National Review Podcast as well. Sarah Bedford is senior political reporter over at Washington Examiner. Sarah, I had Tom Emmer on earlier, and the House GOP whip is an optimist about the approach bills. Is he happy talk for the audience, or are you hearing the same thing?
Well, I think that there's an optimism that the Democrats aren't going to dig in again the way they did with the shutdown. Even though they did a victory lap when the government reopened, you didn't see them try to tout that for long. They were immediately on to Epstein. I think there was a recognition that that was not a successful strategy. They didn't materially get anything out of it, and it's not clear politically if they got anything out of it, since the left faction that pushed them to do it in the first place was dissatisfied that it ended. I think they would have been fine if the government had stayed shut down for 4 years. So there's, I think, a real sense of optimism that at least we won't have the same sort of maximalist politics again in the appropriations process that led to that shutdown.
Now, I'm relieved today because NVIDIA reported its earnings, and they were very good, and the stock is up 5% in after-hours trading. So the AI bubble, if there is a bubble, isn't going to burst tomorrow. But if it does burst, who's going to get blamed if the market corrects 20, 30%?
Gosh, that's such a good question, because so much of the economy now, I mean, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, like so much of it is built off of the success of just a handful of these AI companies. And you don't hear the Trump administration or either party really talking a lot about the regulatory issues around AI or what would happen if you did have an enormous bubble like NVIDIA or AI pop. But you're right, the earnings report did come out good and, you know, live to fight another day. But there was a lot of fear that if NVIDIA had missed earnings this afternoon, that you would see some sort of extinction level event on the trading floor. That didn't happen.
Well, there was that worry, and I don't want that to happen ever. And I want people to be able to unwind their positions over the course of a quarter. But it's still pretty precarious. Are the Republicans, are they looking over their shoulder at 2008? Because I think the rule of thumb is if you're in office when a bubble pops, you get blamed.
Yeah, Donald Trump would absolutely bear the blame if there was some sort of massive financial crisis on his watch, especially since the bulk of his appeal to everyday normie voters was this perception that he's a businessman, he knows how things work, and he's going to keep the economy going. That was the case of what was happening during his first term until COVID. And so, yeah, if there was some sort of financial crisis under Trump, you would bet he'd bear responsibility. But I think you make a really interesting point, Hugh. You don't hear a lot of lawmakers talking about what would happen with an AI bubble. It's not just Wall Street investors who own a lot of NVIDIA stock. It's also people's 401ks, it's pensions. There would be a lot of ripple effects if the AI bubble were to pop sometime soon.
Oh, the collateral damage would be immense, which is why I'm being Chicken Little, because I don't want my audience to never have been warned that these values are stratospheric. Let me close by asking you, I've been downtown yesterday and today. Crown Prince MBS is in town. I have never seen traffic this bad. Have you run into that, Sarah Bedford?
That's so funny that you ask. I actually almost didn't make it back here. Caught in some horrific traffic with the Saudi people in town. You know, so it was quite the scene in Washington, D.C.
It's like they blocked every street that I wanted to be on, and my poor Uber driver made 8 or 9 different moves that were not on the radar. But it's not just me. So you experienced the same thing?
Oh, yeah. It seems like half the city was shut down. I was thinking he's speaking at the Kennedy Center, but all the way over the White House at the Capitol, it was shut down as well.
Yeah. I just want the rest of the country to know it's not always a rose garden when they're in the rose garden. In other words, when you get a bigwig like the Crown Prince come into town and they bring the security details out the wazoo, everything shuts down and it's no fun for anyone. Sarah Bedford, always good to talk to you. Follow her at Sarah C. Bedford over at X. Let me remind you as well, I'm over 99,000 followers at YouTube. You could be the 100,000th follower, which gets a silver plaque for the studio, for the Relief Factor studio. And I really want that. So would you please go? I want it just to get the algorithm to begin pushing out interviews like Steve Hilton and interviews like Tom Emmer and Mary Catherine Ham and interviews like Charles C.W. Cook. When you get the algorithm above 100,000, something happens when you got 100,000 subscribers at YouTube, and all of a sudden your clips are showing up everywhere. So do me the favor. You can join the universe. I would love for you to join the universe. We got 250,000 people following me on X, and I appreciate that as well. But go over to Hugh Hewitt and YouTube, like and subscribe, or just subscribe, and I'll stop pestering you about it. And then I'll leave you alone. I promise I'll never mention it again. But if we're only to get the Amit Segal interview today, that's worth going over to the YouTube and enrolling in the Hugh Hewitt feed. Sometimes you meet people at DC events, no matter what the event, that you instantly click with. And that happened to me a couple of weeks ago at the memorial service for my friend Bob Barnett. I was sitting next to Paul Bogards, and he joins me now because he and I ended up spending about 45 minutes having the most interesting conversation. He followed up by sending me this book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, about a movie I didn't know was coming out starring Russell Crowe. Paul, thank you for joining me. Where do we find you today?
Well, actually, I am in Montreal. My wife and I are living here part-time. We rent an apartment. I went to school here many years ago, back in the day, back in the era of the PQ, the Parti Québécois, when René Lévesque was premier. So it's a great
I begin my morning show, Bonjour, Hi, because my son's father-in-law grew up in Montreal. So he always said, Bonjour, Hi, as an obligatory response to whenever you go into anywhere in Montreal. Paul, what I wanted to talk to people about is what you told me, what we talked about, your reanimation business. Because I've been thinking about it quite a lot, and I have a couple of nominees to be reanimated. But first, tell people what it is that you do with backlisted authors who are no longer with us on the planet.
Well, the principal author that I represent on behalf of the Joan Didion, John Gregory Dunn Literary Trust is, in fact, Joan Didion. Joan Didion and I had the great fortune of being able to work with her dating back until 2001. I first met Ms. Didion in 2001. We were about to publish a book called Political Fictions, in which she cast about looking at the political landscape in America in the wake of Reagan, and political journalism in the wake of the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal. So I worked with Didion from 2001 until 2021. She died in December of 2021. And the day that she died, I was approached by the estate to represent the literary trust, to represent Joan and to work on a forward basis in collaboration with the trust. And one of the things that we see in the world of publishing, and I hasten to add that I spent my entire career working in trade book publishing. I had the great fortune of working with Sunny Mehta, who I think was probably the most brilliant publisher of the 20th and 21st centuries.
At Knopf, right?
At Knopf, we worked together for three decades. In fact, he hired me in 1989. He approached me when he discovered that I had worked on a debut novel by a writer named Michael Chabon called The Mysteries of Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes.
Yes. But that's getting a little sidetracked. So Joan died, and what happens, often when writers die, when writers with a backlist, when writers who have published novels or works of nonfiction, is in the year of their death, there's a bump. But then in the years to come, sales will start to erode year over year. And I think one of the reasons for that, is that the people who are custodians of the writer's intellectual property, of their backlist, the people who manage author estates are not, in fact, doing a very good job. So one of the things that we're doing with Joan Didion is just being attentive to the world and to the reading community that supports her work. We have had, of course, since Joan died, the opening of her archives at the New York Public Library. So our job, my job, the job of Bogart's Public Relations, is to collaborate with the New York Public Library on driving awareness for the opening of her archive and John Gregory Dunn's archive at the New York Public Library.
And what I took away from our conversation was, I wonder how many authors are out there who are not well served by their estates, not because of malice, simply because of inartfulness. And I started to make a list, and I'm going to throw two at you, of people whose books ought never to go out of style. Paul Johnson, British historian extraordinaire, Modern Times, History of the Jews. He just wrote everything, intellectuals. And the other was Colleen McCullough, whose First Man in Rome series did more since Plutarch to actually explain the late Roman Republic and the early Roman Empire. And I don't know if anyone tends to Paul Johnson or Colleen McCullough, and there are probably 100 more. Do you think anyone thinks about this very much, or is this a new and fertile field for you?
Well, it's certainly a new and fertile field for me, and I think in the wake of this interview, there'll probably be 100 people rushing to contact the estates of certain writers, hoping to represent them. But there's work that needs to be done, and it might not work for every writer. One of the things to recognize about Joan Didion is that, her work stands up today, okay, in the calendar year 2025 going into 2026, as well as it did back in the 1960s when she first started publishing. And Didion is an easy writer to fall in love with, because syntactically she is a genius. And of course, one of the strengths of her work is her ability to observe the culture that we live in. And the 60s are very different from this moment in time, but there are, in fact, a lot of similarities.
Oh, yeah.
In the threads.
Paul, stand by for a second while I take a break, and I'm going to come back and talk to him on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere, America. You can find the entire interview at my YouTube channel. But I want you to start thinking about the number of people out there, the great books that you have read that you don't see really featured anywhere because people have forgotten how to promote authors who are no longer alive. If you enjoyed that conversation with Paul Bogards about how to reanimate authors, I continue to talk to him for an additional 10 minutes, and it's over at my YouTube channel. I think it's fascinating and fabulous, and I wish him well. With every author who deserves, like Paul Johnson and Colleen McCullough, a long and good and safe run in the bookstores. You deserve a long, good, and safe run online, which brings me to webroot.com, at webroot.com/Hewitt to be specific. Webroot.com/Hewitt introduces you to Webroot Total Protection at 60% off. I'm telling you about this because we are entering into the season of cyber theft reaching its peak, its frenzy, because they know that many people start going online for Prime, for Black Friday, for Cyber Monday. They're trying to send you fake phishing emails. They're trying to get you to upload malware into your computer. They're trying to get to your finances. And by they, I mean millions of bad guys, some of them state-sponsored, some of them just organized crime. And they know that you're not so sophisticated, and you need webroot.com/Hewitt. For 60% off right now, you can get one identity and up to 5 devices protected, or you can get up to 10 identities and 10 devices protected. Don't wait another day. Do get protected at webroot.com. While I'm talking about getting protected, save yourself some money as well. We're going into the holidays. Save yourself a lot of money with consumercellular.com, consumercellular.com/Hugh. All right, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you can call them at 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Remember, my code is Hugh25. That saves you an additional $5 off a month for the first 5 months. But the reason I want you to do it is you're probably paying too much for your cell phone data plan. Certainly you are if it's an unlimited data plan and you're over 50. Call them. If you're over 50 years old, Consumer Cellular offers a plan for people who are 50 and older, 2 lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. Takes 20 minutes to switch. Keep your number, keep all your contacts, keep all your information, but save money. And no matter who you are, what age you are, at least call and check. Get your phone bill out, and then call 800-411-4454. Say, hey, I want to compare. And by the way, the code is Hugh25. Save $25 off, $5 a month for the first 5 invoices. Finally, I'm in the Relief Factor studio today. I'll be in it tomorrow. I'll be in it whenever I broadcast. Love Relief Factor. Got my 6 miles in this morning before a very busy day. Feel great as the day is coming to an end, and I'm getting ready to wrap up the show because Relief Factor does continue to work day in and day out. Took it in the first hour. Doesn't matter how far you go. If you take it every day, the minor aches and pains that a lot of people use aspirin or Tylenol or Advil or ibuprofen or something else for, I like an all-natural Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, $19.95 for the starter pack, 3-week supply of Relief Factor, less than $1 a day, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or simply go to their website and find that starter pack there at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com.